I feel like this current era is severely testing our resilience as artists with everything that's going on. AI, social media, just like inflation and how expensive everything is, and the state of the world, and just who's okay right now? It's what I want to know. But instead of like just complaining about it, I always try to find solutions. And I think that the world that we have been dealt with, like those cards that we've been dealt have been so bad that I feel like a lot of people haven't figured out how to, or have lost sight of how to cope with it, because there's so much, like, financially, and like just like in terms of their morale, and just in general. So I think that it would be good to talk about how we each persevered through hard times, and like how we kept going, and what kind of guardrails that we set up to keep ourselves afloat in the most trying of times. Because I think that people on the mass unemployment that the industry has right now, um and like all layoffs between animation, the lack of jobs and freelance, like in illustration and in the game industry, just laying off tens of thousands of people. It's been really tough. And I'm personally curious how everybody pushes through the situations, because like putting tools in your arsenal can be really important when you really, really need them. So I think, yeah, y'all want to talk about that? Do you think that's good?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
absolutely.
Well then, hello everybody, and welcome to the Painted in Color podcast. I'm co-host Lauren Brown, joined by co-host Mia Araujo and Eric Wilkerson. And today we're going to talk about resilience as an artist, how to persevere in a world that seems like it doesn't want artists here. So let's get started, shall we? Eric, what is that face?
Well, I mean, so when we think about perseverance and making an art career, having an art career, a strong, stable art career, I I I guess I think I'm the oldest one here.
Yes.
And uh, I've been doing this professionally since 2000. Um, and when I got out of school, there were people that they hit the ground running. They graduated and were immediately working for Marvel Comics or whatever the publisher was, whatever the studio was. But within 5 years, I saw uh, companies like EA Games and places where I knew a lot of my peers had gone to work started laying people off. Like, and they were up these friends were uprooting their lives, uprooting their families, selling their homes to relocate to jobs that didn't last for 6 months. And I can't imagine having to tell my wife, well, quit your job because the gravy train's going to be out in Texas, and we're going to move out there and set up shop, and I'm going to be do being this have this cool concept art or art director job, and then have to walk in the door 6 months later. Yeah, I think you can get that job back.
Mm-hmm.
That you left, honey. That's rough. But I just think about the things that people are experiencing now. It's not new. The industry ebbs and flows like that. Um, but I think that what allows any artist to persevere through those times is, and I've said this on more than one occasion, having more than one source of income. Um, as an illustrator, I always felt when I was first starting out, I kind of looked at having a staff art job as uh, kind of like giving up. Like, I wanted to be a freelancer. I wanted to be doing book covers. I wanted to be doing this and that. And here I am in a cubicle somewhere. And like all the guys I went to school with are all, they're on the bookshelves, and I was really envious, but I had a stable job.
Mhm.
And from the outside looking in, from my parents' point of view, it's like, what are you complaining about? You did exactly what we hoped you would do in school, and you have a job. But I always thought, well, if that job doesn't last, that was always in the back of my head is like, well, if I don't make that next round of cuts, if I don't make it through that next round of cuts, or if the art director doesn't like that I didn't laugh at his jokes, or some whatever stupid reason they can find to get rid of you, what am I going to fall back on if I don't have some kind of established freelance career? What am I going to do if I can't call up or email some art director and say, hey, I'm available? You know, I mean, and if the longer always felt like the longer I stayed in a staff art job, the longer it would take to establish myself as a professional or freelance artist. Um, and it's just I rocked both sides of that fence for so long. Um, and eventually ended up on that chopping block where, I they just said it called me into a room and were like, okay, well, we no longer need you. And that happened enough times with staff art jobs that I just thought, okay, well, I don't like that feeling of having to then go home and feel like I'm starting from square one and go, okay, what now? What do I do now? And for I guess for a lot of people in the world, that's how they feel every time they get laid off from a job. There's nothing, there's no plan. They just have to go scour the internet and apply for anything. But I always thought, well, if I am established as an artist, if I have an agent, if I have connections in the industry, if people know and care who I am, and I do good work, then I can kind of mitigate uh, the the financial damage caused by me getting laid off from that one job. I can always count on something covering my bills. Um, Patreon didn't exist when I got to school. Like, so that wasn't even an option. YouTube wasn't an option for, dancing and singing and doing God knows whatever else on that platform. But there's so many things now that people can use as an additional source or a main source of income so that they don't have to chase after some job that can just get snatched out from under them like that.
Yeah.
We can go on YouTube right now and see people talk about, here's how I make $8,000 a month. you
I saw
know
that video. I know exactly the one you're talking about.
yeah, you know, and you go, wow. And then you just at home. You're not running around at conventions or nothing. You're just doing your YouTube thing and your Patreon. My God. Okay. So that shows me that with enough hustle and the right quality and the right kind of work, you can do that and not have to have that slow drive home, having to explain to somebody, well, I lost that job. So let's see how much we got in the account to cover the mortgage until I can find something else. But, at the end of the day, and that could be any job. That's any career. There's people think about, okay, well, you don't be an artist because you'll be a starving artist. Well, you could be in any field right now
And still
and be
find,
on that chopping block.
yeah,
So,
yeah, in a completely vulnerable position. Because I think that I think a lot of, especially younger artists, are so focused on getting that foot in the door that they stop thinking once they've gotten that first job. And if that first job falls through, there's no backup plan whatsoever because they're just like, well, I got here, I made it. And it's just like, no, like nothing in this industry is permanent. Not like you said, not even in this industry, but in a lot of different industries, it's not permanent. anything could go away tomorrow. I have no uh I have no imagination that like that even the job that I have right now, which should be stable, is stable. I've already survived two layoffs. I I have to plan all these different things in case of emergency because I never have the assumption that my job is secure and that I'm going to have a job tomorrow. Because I just already know too well that these industries or work in general could dry up at any moment. And the question really that I think every artist should ask themselves is what happens if my primary source of income fails? What do I fall back on? And if you don't have a fallback, that's a problem. And you should probably start thinking about your fallback because this world has been extremely unforgiving. But like Eric said, it's been like this. It ebbs and flows like this constantly, and there's going to be something new to replace it. Like it has to be. Like you don't set that many artists free, and like we don't do anything. Like that's just not going to happen. We're going to find something else to do, but it's going to take a while, and it's going to be hard for a while. So while we're in that in between limbo state of not knowing what to do, and it can feel very hopeless because people have families to take care of, people have bills to pay, people need to have a roof over their head. How do you fortify yourself against that next drought? And I think that's the question that people need to ask themselves. So Mia, like what I want to know too from you, what's your experience with this kind of thinking, or like just at least like when was the last time you felt like I have to get this done because there's no other choice?
I mean, I've never had a studio job, so I don't know like the fear of layoffs and stuff. But my partner does, and he's been through a few, and so it's just hearing him about his stories about that. I obviously don't know what that's like, but I guess the closest thing to it would be like when I first started in the gallery world. It was like a year before the stock market crash in 2008, and
God.
it was like basically the time I started in the gallery world, it was the beginning of the end of that bubble of underground fine art in LA where it was like pop surrealism, like everyone was buying art left and right, like people's shows would be sold out on opening night every single month. It was like there were collectors that would buy 4 pieces and stuff, and by the time I started, people were buying maybe 1 piece, and like there were some shows that wouldn't sell out even if the artist was pretty well known. And I had no idea starting out. I thought, I was very green and naive and stuff, and I was very excited to be there, but I had no idea it was the beginning of the end. Like looking back now, I can see it. But basically, by the time I stopped pretty much showing regularly, it was around 2012. I basically did not have like any shows lined up at all. I also did not have any work experience. I did not have any like work history. Being a self-employed artist, like you don't really have a resume that people will like snap you up, right? So it was very much and I was in debt. So it's like interestingly enough, it's like I'm in debt again now, but the situation is so different because I now have a portfolio. I now have certain skills that I didn't have then. I've now actually written a book that's hopefully going to be out soon and stuff like that. Like I've done things that at the time there I hadn't done yet. And it is such a different when you look in the future and it's uncertain and you're seeing all this money you owe or like money you're not making, it makes a real difference where you are if you're just like at the beginning of your career or you're kind of in the middle of your career. So I understand the fear of like being at the beginning and being like, now what do I do? I have nothing. I have no work experience. Nobody wants me. And that's why I chose to go to like the service industry and kind of work my way up from the bottom. And it was really hard. I gotta say that I've talked about this before on the show, but so I'll keep this brief. But it was that taking that first step of not taking an art job and instead moving to a non-creative job felt like the biggest failure of my whole life. But in retrospect, that's so dramatic because it totally wasn't, and all those experiences, like I'm so grateful to have had them, but every person is different. And that's, I guess, like what this comes down to is like what your priorities are in life. And for me at that time, survival was a priority. And it's like, I'll keep creating. And I did, I never stopped creating. But it's like, I think right now to get through like a really tough time like this where you kind of don't know where the industry is going, if you at least know that you want to create art in some way, just figure out how to survive and keep working on your art however you can, even that if that's just like eking it out once a week or something. But I think that's what got me through it is just like I'm not quitting art. I'm just not doing this as my income, and I just
Yeah.
have to make it through this time until I can do it again, until I can build up the skills or I can build up the connections in a new industry or whatever it might be. And sorry if I'm kind of veering off into different things there, but
No, that was perfect. Because
yeah.
like, yeah, because I'm not just talking about studio art, I'm talking about all of arts because freelance and studio and just like independent artists, the art market, all these things are kind of under attack right now. So it's all relevant.
Yeah.
So yeah, and like I think that's really important to mention too. Like I know that we talked about this on the show before, that you've gone to the service industry and like you found another field to survive while you were working on your art. I feel like a lot of artists are terrified to do that. They probably felt like you felt, where it's just like, oh, I must have failed because I'm not doing art full time. And it's like that's so far from the truth. And I'm not going to be mean about it or not empathetic because I've been seeing a lot of posts around this, especially with what with AI and the layoffs and everything, where it's just like, well, I guess there's people making like dramatic statements online. It's like, well, I guess I'll just never be a professional artist, or I guess I'll just not do art again. And I'm like, y'all, come on, like, can we not do this right now? Like, maybe this is a spicy hot take. I don't know, but I feel like the resilience of artists in general has gotten so cracked in this age of social media. And like that sounds like such an old person thing to say, like a boomer thing to say, but I do think so. It's like I think we self-coddle without actually setting up ways to succeed in the future. It's easier to complain about it than it is to do something about it. And I see a lot of people complaining about it without actually setting the foundation for themselves to succeed later on. And there's just short-term thinking and not long-term thinking. And I think that artists really need to start thinking more long term. It's like maybe you don't see a bunch of money coming in from your art right now, but what are you doing to ensure that you get that income in the future? Are you laying the foundation? Are you investing in something? Are you investing in your own art? Are you writing your stories? Are you seeing what you as an individual can bring to the art field that may not be out there in abundance right now? Can you work on that? Can you cultivate that? And I think people are so fixated on the right in front of them, like what's right here, because this is what social media has allowed us to do is like instant gratification. If I'm not seeing money now, then surely I must be a failure. And it's so far from the truth. Sometimes this is a long game, unfortunately. And, I know you have to survive and you're not going to see everything right away. There's people who I talk to all the time where like they're like, I'm doing conventions, but I'm not making enough money, so maybe I just not do conventions anymore. I'm like, bro, conventions take time to get good at them. And also to find your target audience, it takes effort. If you don't like the scene, if you're not cut out for it, that's fine. Like sometimes it's not for everybody. But these people will be like, well, I don't want to do conventions, but like I guess I'm planning for the next convention. It's like, okay, so clearly you want to do your convention. You want to do conventions, but you're discouraged because this one didn't work out for you. But I see so many people eager to give up that they just stop trying. And I'm like, you can't stop trying, especially as an artist, because you're just leaving everything on the table. You're not bringing it anywhere. You're not doing anything with it. And I think that people really need to start challenging themselves to keep it going. You started a sentence, now how do you finish it? How do you keep this going? So it's really important because I think a lot of people have been talking about I must be a failure because I have to seek out another part-time job or another field or another industry. And no, no, you are not a failure. Are you making money? Are you ensuring your survival? Are you ensuring that you are creating an environment for yourself to be able to create art, even if it's not now in the future? Surviving like each day at a time, like one step forward. That's important to do. And I see a lot of people speaking with this like absolutist mentality of like, if I can't do it now, then I guess I'll never do it. It's taken some of my really good friends and talented friends 10 years to start their career. Like Kristen Garland was on our show talking about how long it took her to start her career. Look how talented she is. So how amazing she is, how hard she's worked at her own art. And I think that there's a lot of posts going around that are like, I'm not going to be an artist anymore. And I'm like, I get so mad when I see those posts on Facebook and they get shared around so much. I'm like, don't discourage young people from pursuing this dream. Like, maybe this is the path for you. That's fine. But like that language starts to get into your head, especially when you are already feeling discouraged. It's like we need to be encouraging each other right now. We need to be like supporting each other right now and letting others know what resources are out there to help keep this thing going, even if it's not a right now thing in the future. So, sorry, that's my soapbox. of like I just get really frustrated. So
I
yeah.
don't know. I feel that, and I just want to say something that like hearing you talk about that made me think of right away was that I think part of what it feels so bleak is because if you've only been trying at art, you're like, this is all I know how to do, and I see that a lot too. This is the only skill I have, guys. I have nothing else. If I don't have art, what else can I do? And it's like humans are freaking adaptable. They're like, you know, like if there are people who can survive in like extreme weather and maybe have never been in that weather before, and your body can somehow do it. So it's like I think sometimes it's that exposure as well, where it's like in the beginning, I didn't think I could do it. But now because I've gone through that, I think that's part of why I'm not it's not that I'm not scared about the future, because the future and the present actually right now is really scary. But honestly, the other day I told my partner, I was like, I'll go back to serving if I have to. And here I am, like finishing my book and doing all the stuff that I've worked so hard to do. But I'm like, I will go back and do that. If that means if that's more of a guarantee to make money than my art, then I will do it. I have no pride over that anymore because I know I've done it and I know I can do it again, you know? And it's like when you've never done it, it doesn't feel like you can. And it's like, so I feel like I get that too, where it's like, if you haven't had to do something else, it feels like the end of the world. But it's like, once you've gone through it and you've survived, I feel like you have more trust in yourself that you can get through another thing, you know? So it's back to what you were talking about too, Eric, having survived a few layoffs at different jobs and having survived your career as long as you have, you get used to your own capacity, I guess, like what you can your own resilience, right? Is like there's proof there, I guess, of what you can weather. Sorry, words are slowly not coming
Yeah.
out.
Oh, you're all good.
But
I
anyway, it
think
was just a
about
thought I had.
the social media posts and stuff that you're talking about, Lauren. People saying that they're going to give up and they're going to stop trying to be a professional artist because of AI or something,
Yeah.
whatever the big bad wolf is of the moment. And I just think, well, if you're not passionate enough to keep going, if you don't have that perseverance in you to keep going, then anything can talk you out, can talk you off, talk you, out of doing whatever it is that you thought you wanted to do professionally or, artistically, anything. You have to really 100% want to do this. And if you don't, if you're not passionate about it, if it's just like a casual hobby thing that you like to make money with every once in a while, then okay, then go get a regular job doing something completely different and be an artist, on the weekends. But if this is something that if money were no object and you just said, this is what I want to do with my days for the rest of my life, if you were that passionate about it, AI or whatever might come in the future, nothing is going to stop you from creating, period.
And it's just
So when
yeah.
somebody says, well, I can't compete with this, or I can't do that, or this scares me and I'm just going to give up. Well, you were going to give up next week or 2 months from now or 2 years from now. Something was going to come along and scare you away. So bye. I don't know what else. I mean, it's
That's why it makes me so upset because like I can't do anything with that information.
right,
Like what is it supposed to give me when I read this post? Like
right,
it gives me nothing.
I think the way I look at that too is like you can be the most passionate person and still not be able to make a living off your art. Because for many of
True.
the reasons we talked about on the show, your work, and that's the thing, I had to have the self-awareness too to know that my work is very niche. There's it's a smaller audience than the mainstream that's going to want what I want to make. But also nobody owes me a living off the thing I want to make. So if I'm stubborn enough to want to make that, then I have to find other ways to make it. And that's not giving up, right? So to your point, I am passionate enough to do this because I'm willing to do anything it takes to keep making it, you know? And so it's just like AI, whatever, like climate change, it's not going to stop me from making. I'll make art with sticks if I have to, you know?
Yeah.
right. But then you see that
100%.
there's countless people out there that are not chasing 9 to 5 jobs with the game studios. They're not chasing after publishing. They have that niche uh art that they make, whatever it is that they do, and they've put it online and they said, hey, this is who I am. And they've built up that following. And then they said, hey, could you support me while I do this thing? And they put that Patreon out there. And then 5, 6 years down the line, they've got 1,000, 2,000, $8,000 pouring in from people that just want to give $5 here and there
Yeah.
to support what they do. And they never have to chase after anybody. They put it out there and people either love it or they don't.
Yeah.
And if you have some other form of income while you're trying to build up that audience, while you're trying to build up whatever it is that you love to do, whatever it is that you're passionate about, then you'll be fine. But it's when people don't have that backup plan or they don't have a plan, period, and they're just going from leaping from one dead end job or one project to the next with no plan for their future. That's when they get really scared. That's when it starts to really wreck people's mental health. When talking about or when thinking about their career or their art, what do I do if this doesn't work out? What do I do if nobody loves this next piece that I do? If they just get stuck in the moment instead of thinking, okay, well, let me finish this. Let me make the next piece and the next piece and show people that this is what I really love to do. And then if you keep doing it, somebody will be willing to give you $5, $10, $20, $1,000, whatever it might be for what you do. I just believe that.
Yeah.
I'm living that.
Yeah.
It's also finding the thing that like you're finding your audience. I guess we've talked about that in different ways, but it's like you have to have this hyper sense of self-awareness about your work, about how it's perceived, how you see it, but also how other people see it, right? And just like, this is a really bad example, but when you're thinking about merchandise for your art for your to sell at a table, right? There's some people's art that looks great on a mug, for instance, and other people's art that doesn't. And it's
Yeah.
like, what defines that? I feel like that, that kind of specificity in terms of how your work is received, or how people, finding how your audience would want to receive your art. Maybe that's a better way to say it.
Yeah.
I think that takes time. It takes trial and error. And I don't know about you guys, but it's like thinking back to myself, even pre-pandemic me in my head. Sometimes when I see like old Facebook posts come up in my memories and I see how I would talk about my work, I'm like, man, I had such blinders on about my work. Like I didn't totally understand it back then. But it's like it took me a while to see. And then it's just funny to look back on this post and be like, that was totally not going to work. What were you thinking? But it's like there's no skipping that stage. And that's what's hard for a lot of people, that it's like, I think that's what's so difficult about this time now, that it's like that trial and error in people's careers is not really guaranteed. Not that it ever was, but it's going to become harder to live through those times. And it's like, I guess the way I think about it is like the bakers on Bake Off, whatever, the British show,
Yeah.
whatever, like most of them have full-time jobs at something else and baking is just their passion. And it's starting to feel like that's going to be most of us, that it's like, except for the few people who make it big and just kind of luck out and get the right people looking at their art, we're kind of transitioning towards that scarcity time where it's just like everybody else is just going to be trying to figure it out and not making a living off of that in the meantime.
Yeah.
And that's what's difficult, because it's like, as you've said, Eric, it's not new, but it's like there has been sort of an ebb and flow in the different art industries where art has been in demand and then it kind of isn't, and then it is, and then it isn't. And it's like, this is one of those kind of, low
Right.
tide kind of moments. And it's like, how do you survive that? And yeah, it's, I guess the answer for me is it's not always going to be with art that you'll survive that, but it doesn't mean you have to stop completely. In fact, if you do want to make it eventually, you shouldn't stop. You should find any way to either keep growing your art, growing yourself. Anyway, I'm rambling. I'll
Yeah.
let you guys
Well,
talk.
when I was in college, they would say that you should be laser focused on one type of thing in laser focused on putting one thing in your portfolio that lets everybody know what you do, what you want to do. But what if 10 other people that show their portfolios or 1,000 other people that show their portfolios also want to do that one thing and they're way better than you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you do then? So, and I thought about that back in college. Okay, well, I'm not as good as this kid that's sitting next to me in my painting class, or I'm definitely not as good as this dude, you know? So I thought, okay, well, oh crap, I need to future proof my portfolio a little bit. So I took classes in storyboarding. I took a children's book illustration class. I took a class in advertising. I took a business of illustration class so that I could just know how to manage my life when I got out of school. That's stuff that a lot of people didn't do. So
Yeah.
when I left college, I had like four completely different portfolios. with completely different styles. So if I showed the thing that I was truly passionate about to an art director and they said, almost there, show us some samples in like 6 months, you almost, not quite. I was good enough to do storyboards. I was good enough to do this. I was good enough to do that. And it kept me afloat. There were options. I gave myself options. And as an artist, or I think about actors. Like, you don't if an actor wants to show that they have range, how many people want to keep you being cast as, the police officer or the villain, or all they want to show that they can act. They want to show that they have range. They do an off-Broadway thing. They do some plays. They do some TV or some commercials. They do whatever it takes so that they are constantly working. They don't sit there and go, "Oh my God, I can't get this. I want to be Tom Cruise. Why am I not Tom Cruise? I'm only going to accept the role if it gets me closer to being Tom Cruise." No, most of them are just like, it's a dog commercial. How much does it pay?
I mean,
Straight
look at
up.
look at Pedro Pascal, right? I mean, he became famous in his 40s, right? He was in so many bit parts and random things, and it's like if he could have given up and just been like, I guess I'm not going to be Tom Cruise, but it's like
Right.
I love him so much, and I'm so glad
Yeah,
he
it's
did.
You
like,
you
no, you're
go
gonna be
from
Pedro Pascal.
you're
Yeah,
going from like Buffy the Vampire Slayer to like B
Yeah.
movie Spy Kids spin-offs to Mandalorian.
I know.
Yeah.
Freaking
You know what I'm
Last of Us
saying?
and Game of
Like,
Thrones.
and
Yeah.
that would have never happened if he was just like, screw this, it's never gonna happen. I guess I'll just go work at some car dealership.
Yeah.
Throwing in the towel. It's just you never know when your own voice is going to be what society actually needs too. It's like there's a lot of diluting that and for the sake of again that short-term thing. So like when you said Eric, for example, what if people are doing your same niche and they do it way better than you? I've been seeing this a lot with people's portfolios because I've been seeing a lot of portfolios lately since I'm an art director. And so many artists are just like, I just really want a magic card, which is like a normal thing to want. It's a prestigious thing, but they tailor their portfolios after other magic artists. And all I see is like that same painterly fantasy style with a lady, and there's a dragon, and there's like maybe a guy in armor, and like some kind of like environment that's kind of painted with the textures not really quite defined. And I can tell that they want a magic card so bad, but they're not actually invested in any of the subject matter that they're painting. And that's all their portfolio is. And I tell them each time, so you have this and your painting chops are, fine, but what in your portfolio is you? Because I'm not really seeing it. All I see is kind of like, all right, you're trying to do a Todd Lockwood, or you're trying to do a Jamie Jones, or you're trying to do like, but we already have Todd Lockwood. Like we already have like Raymond Swanland. Like we already have these artists that are doing what they do extremely well for years and years. What are you bringing to that I haven't seen before? Like, what are you bringing that tells me something about you? And it can span across the diversified things that are in your portfolio. Like, if you want to teach yourself other skills, how does that voice translate to this part of your work? How does that voice translate to that part of your work? What thread carries that through? A lot of artists don't know how to answer that question because they haven't thought about it. They're only thinking about the one thing that they had wanted. But it's like that plan isn't sustainable either because you get one magic card, cool. What if they don't invite you back? What if like that's like all the work that you get? Like that's like a lot of people have that goal, but they're not thinking about that long-term plan. They're not thinking about keeping like again cultivating that and keeping it going. And like because I've seen so many people turn that same portfolio in over and over again, I just like want to tell everybody, please, please paint something else. Please paint something that is specific and unique to you. Like literally, I was looking at somebody's portfolio and she was asking me for advice. And I asked her, I was like, okay, like what? I was like, what do you want to paint the most? Like, what do you see? What do you see yourself wanting to really do? If you had all the options out there, like if you wanted to paint like one thing for a long time, what would it be? And she was like, well, I would really love to do creature designs. Like I really am passionate about creature designs. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I don't see any creature designs in your portfolio. Where are they? Where are they? And she was like, oh yeah, like I guess they're not there. And I'm like, so maybe start by doing that, the thing that you're actually excited about, because a lot of people edit themselves because they think that they are showing a studio or a client or an art director what that client wants to see. What do you want to paint? And how do you convince like a client or a studio that that's what they need in their studio? It goes the other way around, because only aiming for one short-sighted vision, like I want to paint for this studio, so I'm only going to do this studio style. That studio already has those people making that style for them. They have a slew of people doing it.
Yeah.
Who are you? What are you bringing to the table? I think that is probably one of the best and most long-term things you can do for yourself as an artist, is figure out who you actually are as an artist. And obviously this is for people who have just got, like, you haven't started in the industry yet, for people who maybe haven't broken into the door, have gotten a few small gigs here and there, but figure that out and cultivate that and build that up, because your is going to become a lot, especially if you can't lean on one specific thing, one specific studio to hire you, one specific client to hire you. How do you keep that going? It's knowing who you are and then finding where that niche belongs for yourself. Super important. But yeah, it takes a long time to build that up sometimes, and it's very, very frustrating. And I know it seems like, all of us have our careers, and all of us have our own big projects that we're doing, or we have success in one way or another. So it can feel like a privileged position that we're speaking from. But I think each of us have been in a position where we have had that desperation of, oh God, everything could fail right now. Like for me, that was fairly recently in 2022. I got fired as soon as I was moving to a new city and like a new state. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And I had to answer that question really quickly because I had a mortgage to pay. So what am I going to do? I have no job now. And I figured it out really fast because long-term planning was a thing that I had been doing since I started my career, and I was really glad I did that. But people are going to find themselves in that situation, and it's like you have to know how to answer that question before you even get in that situation, because you might find yourself having to answer that sooner than you think. Hopefully not. Hopefully it doesn't happen. But we've all experienced the struggle. So
When you
Yeah,
say
for
long term,
me, it was what you're saying about asking yourself, what do you want to do? Um, and I know I've mentioned this before, but I remember sitting in a cubicle at a game studio, hating the job. Was getting paid nice. Had a cushy thing in New York City, nice apartment, all that. Hated the job. And I'm sitting in my cubicle watching this video um, from the Taoist philosopher Alan Watts. And in the video, he's asking the question, like, what would you do with your life if money were no object? How would you spend your days? And I knew exactly what I would do, but I was afraid to do it. I was afraid to put the work in because I was always thinking, well, if it doesn't work out, it's just going to be a waste of my time. If it doesn't work out, it's this. I was talking myself out of it, and I just stayed in the cubicle, and it was miserable. And I remember I would watch that video every single day, sitting in that cubicle, and it would just cry and just thinking like, I want to do something completely different. I want to be somewhere completely different. I I I I this is what I want to do. I have to make it happen. And I just don't know who will want to see what I want to do. There's no market for it. There's no industry for what I want to do. Where do I take it? And it might not even be. So if you're sitting there and you're listening to this and you know what you want to do, but you don't see it on shelves, you don't see it being done in games, you don't see it, period. It might be that the industry hasn't caught up to your vision or what it is that you are passionate about. But if you put it out there in the world, then all of a sudden there's going to be some conference. So there's going to be some meeting where somebody saw your work online and they say, that's what we were looking for. That's what we need. Call that person because we need them on this project immediately. and it could change your life.
Mhm.
But if you don't finish it, if you don't do it, if you talk yourself out of it and you just stay in that cubicle or you stay at that dead end job doing whatever it is that you're doing and you stay miserable, there will come a point in your life where time will have run out and somebody else will have done something close to what you tried to do and they will succeed. And you'll be stuck in that regret mode where you'll just be thinking, I wish I had. I wish I had. And I never wanted to be in that position. So you just take that leap. And if nothing happens, you just have a bunch of art nobody wants, but you're happy that you made
Yeah.
it. But, you know, that's the worst case. The worst thing that could happen is that. So, but you never know. You never know what could happen if you just do the work, put it out there in the world, see what happens, build up that audience, and so that you can balance the stable job or the job that might end. I know we call them stable jobs, but they seem more volatile now than ever.
Yeah.
But if you have that thing that you're passionate about and you can twist that into making some money off of it, great, great. But it comes with asking yourself exactly what I wholeheartedly believe everything. And it's perfect way that you put it, Lauren. You have to know what you want. But there's so many people that start out, they come out of school and they see what's on shelves, they see what's being produced, and they think, I have to do that because that's what they're hiring for.
Mhm. Also, because you know
And
yourself when you're right out of school, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you're not told to use your own voice. You're not told to think about like what you want to create. You're taught to see what's on shelves or in the stores. What are art buyers buying? And you're told to tailor your portfolio for what they want. But if you when you talk to an art director, then they start asking you, well, what's your real voice? What is this? What do you really want to do? And it throws people off.
Yeah.
They're like, oh shit, I've never been asked that
A
before.
lot of artists are like, am I allowed?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're allowed to make whatever you want.
Because it can be scary, right? It's like sometimes the thing you that is your voice feels vulnerable, or it feels like you're saying, like, you haven't seen it out there, so you're like, I don't know if people want this, so it's like it feels like, I don't know, you might not want to share that with the world. But it's like, I think you have to be in a place, it kind of is almost like a meeting of several things at once. Like, it's like your skills have to be at a place where the quality matches what's out there, but then your voice and your self-awareness have to be where you know who you are, and you're not trying to be anyone else but you, but you're also brave enough to be you. And then also luck that the right people are seeing it at that time. And and then that financially your life is sorted enough that you could have arrived at that. So yeah, in terms of it feeling like a privileged position, we're all also well into our 30s and 40s over here, so it's like it's taken a long ass time. So it's like, again, some of these posts about giving up, I see some people saying it's been 5 years and nothing's happening. I'm like, huh, it's been like 17 years over here, man. Like, and I'm still not making a living off my art. But hey, I'm not giving up yet. But it's like it just takes time, and I hate to say that it's like in some cases it might take longer. Like for some people, it might take 20 years. For some people that are lucky to do it out of school, I think they're very rare. And again, it's not that they're any better than anyone else. It's just that those things all aligned for them earlier in life, and they just lucked out in that regard. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's a journey. It's an individual journey for each person. And honestly, this might sound cheesy, but all the winding in the road along the way just kind of shapes you as an artist. It's like this, especially if you want to tell stories. None of those kind of side paths or backtracking that it might seem like in your career is a disadvantage. I think it just adds to your story, to your uniqueness, and to what you have to offer. Um and again, it's like the resilience. I keep thinking there was like some viral tweet about this that I kept seeing about artists being like cockroaches, because like you can try to exterminate us, but we will hold on, like through every form of evolution, right? Like through every bend in evolution, it's like cockroaches are still here, and so
Yeah.
are artists. So
We've been around too damn long to go away now. Like, come on now. Like, we literally artists, I mean, any kind of artist, any kind of creative expression shapes culture. So we literally can't go anywhere. Like there's nothing more important like to each of our like to artists, like just keep creating. Please keep creating because like you have no idea how much you are needed right now
Yeah.
when literally culture is under attack because they're trying to replace it with AI and whatever other soulless machinery is out there to make money. What they can't replace is the soul of an artist, which I know sounds very esoteric, but it's true. Every artist is shaped by their own individual experiences. Every artist has their own point of view. Every artist has their own take on how they would draw the same exact thing. Every artist would do it differently. So that's something that you really can't replace. That's something that you cannot compensate for. So keep working on what you can do. And like sometimes it can be, like maybe like learn storyboards, fortify yourself, maybe learn coding. That's cool and fun. Why not? Like fortify yourself for sure. But while you're doing your art, think about what you draw when no one's looking, what you draw when you don't have an audience. That's probably the thing that people are going to be most interested in. So don't lose sight of it because a lot of people have, especially when they're desperate to just get a job right now. A lot of people lose sight of it just chasing and chasing and chasing. Stop chasing for a second and maybe just like focus a little bit inward and think about what it is that you really want to put into this world because that's going to sustain you for way longer than the short-term chases. And also the art that you really want to make, you really want to make it, so you're going to make it pretty frequently probably, and probably way faster than you would make the other thing that you're trying to slog through and you hate it so much. When you make something that feels so intrinsic to you, it actually feels easier. And you're like, why like and sometimes you draw and you're like, surely I'm not allowed because this is too fun right now. Creation is not about suffering. It doesn't have to be. Creation does not have to be something that is unfun or just work. Like it should feel good to put something out there and it's going to be hard work. It's going to be a challenge. But when you get it out there, you should feel like this is a good representation of you as an artist. And then you can give that to other, companies or clients or just put out in the world, see who's willing to buy it, see who's willing to support your Patreon for it, see who's willing to support a Kickstarter for it, see who's willing to buy it at a convention, see who's willing to hire you at a studio, whatever path you want to take. I think that voice is like probably the most important thing that an artist can cultivate right now. Secondly, another important thing is the community around you. I think a lot of people forget that there's other artists out there also trying to build themselves up. Finding that like group of people who you can talk to and encourage each other in like that space, really, really important because we're all out here and we're all struggling, we're all suffering, and we can commiserate. But if that community has a growth focused mindset, which I hate, growth versus fixed mindset, whatever, buzzwords, I don't care. If they're focused on actually bettering themselves, there's more likely that you also want to better yourself too and keep pushing yourself to do better work and keep pushing yourself to find alternate means of survival while you're making that better work. And maybe find support on the way. Maybe somebody in that community will be like, hey, this job looks like a good fit for you. Maybe like, hey, like I had to start on this project, maybe you want it. You never know what can happen, but a lot of the careers are right place, right time. Find a way to lower that margin of error as much as possible and get yourself like right place, right time is in this space. Make it wider and wider. The more places you go, the more resilient you become, the more art you make. That's going to widen that margin of error.
Yeah. I also want to say that I feel like also keep your eye on the prize in terms of the kind of art you want to make, the kind of stories you want to tell beyond what the current hype is in the industry, whether that's social media or the tech or whatever, because a lot of the stuff is very doesn't last very long, but your art will last if it's from the heart. I always think about 2D animation. Like growing up, I always wanted to do that, but I obviously didn't want it bad enough because I didn't stick with it, right? But it's like I always admire the artists that went into that anyway. Like when I during like my year and afterwards, like there were still artists that studied animation, even though that industry was at the time dead. And right now it seems like it's dying again. I know it seems like that for a lot of people, but I think what I admire a lot is seeing artists that stuck with that anyway, because that's what they love. And there's still amazing films that have been made in the last 20 years since I started school, and it's like I'll always think about that it's like if you just look at the current I guess like the way things are in the present and just only focus on that, you could be missing out on making something that will last longer than just whatever is the hype at the moment, you know?
Yeah.
So I know that's not very well said, but I guess I'm trying to not talk about AI, but I guess that's what I mean. It's like if you're just putting all your eggs in the AI basket right now because that's the new hot thing and you think that's the way out, the thing that's going to make you money, the thing that's going to make you art really quick, you're actually not investing in yourself as a creator, because I feel like we're always going to need people who know how to tell stories, who know how to make pictures themselves, as opposed
Yeah.
to just prompting something. So don't just expect this thing to just take over and change everything. You're still going to have to need to know how to do those things. So anyway, for what it's worth, I think especially underrepresented artists, I think right now it just kills me that this shit's happening right now, right when it felt like, you know, people finally giving a chance to more communities, you know, or like of creators. And it's just like, please don't give up on yourselves. Like, please invest in your own skills and making stuff yourself, because I don't know, I just feel like human made things are never going to truly go out of style. I think that will always captivate people. And honestly, there's always a counterculture to everything, right? And
Yep.
I am staunchly in that camp when it comes to this shit. Like, I will be human made until the day I die. So there you go.
Let's go. Yeah, and speaking of 2D animation too, I think that I have the full belief that there is going to be a resurgence because there is such an appetite for it because people have been getting burned out on computer, only like CGI animation, and like now it's going to be probably AI animation, and like people are going to be like probably like disgusted by it, and like we'll have an increased appetite to see human made art, hand drawn art, things that come from an authentic place. That's why these videos on YouTube, these individual creators like working on this project for years, they'll get millions of views on YouTube because like it's like, oh my God, I haven't seen anybody make stuff like this before. And this is so interesting. Like when 2D animations come out, they're like everybody in the comments is like, I really just want to see 2D animation again. They will come out for it. And I think it's going to come back. So if there's any 2D animators out there listening to this, and like you think that your industry is completely dead, it's like it may be now, but it might not stay that way forever. I don't think it will. It's really tough because a lot of people have put their eggs in that full basket and it did fall out from under them. But what did they fall back on? They fell back on learning other skills. They fell back on learning maybe how to storyboard. You always need storyboards, color scripting. Again, things that are unique to them. And maybe they had to leave the industry for a while and do something else while waiting for that moment to rise again and like find another job or find a completely other thing. That is okay. Artists, it is okay if you have to find a part-time or full-time job that is not an art job. Find your space, please. Find time to sketch at least. Find time to learn a new skill or hone something of yours. Like find just it's okay. It's not the end of the world if you have to seek work elsewhere. It is okay. You have to survive. I get it, and that's fine. It doesn't make you less of an artist. It doesn't make it anything shameful. It doesn't make it anything that you failed or you quit or anything like that. You only quit if you want to quit. You only quit if you stop making art and you don't pick up that sketchbook ever again. That's when you actually quit. So if you have that art still in you, if it's still like if there's still a drive to create and you're still creating, guess what? Congratulations, you're still an artist. You're not losing anything. Please keep putting your out there. Please keep drawing. Do not give up. This is not the time to give up. For the love of God. I will shake each and every one of you who might be listening who's thinking about giving up. I'll shake you all. We need you. Yeah.
Eric, what are you gonna say?
So flashback to 1997. Um, I'm in my college's auditorium and they're having the head of the illustration department is giving this big lecture about um, trying to calm people's nerves because the industry was moving into digital art. That was becoming more mainstream. So we have all these teachers teaching us how to paint traditionally, like nail that likeness traditionally, do everything traditionally. But then all the jobs are going to people that know how to have a command of Photoshop. Like Photoshop and Coral Painter were like the big thing. That was like the next wave that hit. It's like, oh my God, if you don't know how to use these two programs, you might as well just like find a day job and call it a day because you're not going to get art, you're not going to get work. Who cares about your traditional skills? Can you do it in Photoshop? That was the big thing. It was a panic that hit the students. Um, Then you flash forward to the day when Shrek won the Academy Award for Best Animated Film. And that changed the trajectory of the entire animation industry. So there were no more, people weren't tripping over themselves to do 2D productions anymore. It was all 3D everything. Now we have the animation industry being affected, not necessarily because of AI, partly, but because of the fact that there was that whole strike,
Mm-hmm.
the actors strike, the writers strike,
Yeah.
that affected the animation industry by default. Because if there's no writers, there's no actors, there's no voice talent,
Yeah.
So all of that, there's like a whole wave of production that just stops, whether it's 2D or 3D. And now the animation industry has to, oh, the animation industry is not connected to the same unions that were protesting and fighting for better rights and more money and all that stuff. That's a whole different industry that now has to protest and fight to keep AI out of the animation industry. But like the things are slowly starting to trickle back to life, to build back up, now that the actors and the writers and all these people are back to work. But I hadn't even thought about the ripple effect of AI and the protests that happened last year on the animation industry and the wave of firings, the layoffs that have happened. Because if there's nothing to animate, there's no reason to have a bunch of people just lounging around.
Yeah.
And I just, it's just wrecked, all around. But what my point is that there's always some big bad. There's always something that causes a panic in the industry with students or with professionals, but we navigate around it. And you just become better. You become more resilient by default. So, you know, do what you got to do.
Yeah. People like it's really I think people have no choice because there's a hole in the industry. There's going to be a hole in the future, like as we go forward, because of all this turmoil that's happening with the strikes, with the layoffs, with the state of animation, and like all these studios right now, they're gonna if they can't find people in the states who will accept the low pay that they want to give them, what are they gonna do? They're gonna outsource it, and that's what they've been doing. They're outsourcing all their animation on a massive scale to other countries, and so people in the U.S. are just left with what? With nothing. And honestly, I'm surprised that most people are just desperately, like I'm not surprised, but like people are desperately applying to a new studio, trying to find a new place to fit in. I'm surprised that there is such a low percentage of people who are not investing in their own stories and their own work and their own pitches and ideas that they have had for years and years and years. And obviously it's really scary because these productions can take a very long time to do. It takes massive teams, but like I'm just shocked that more people are not like getting together and collaborating on making something, making their own content and investing in their own content. Because I honestly think that's probably going to have to be the new direction if we want to continue to have animation in if in this country even, is like independent creators have to start rising up and have to start making their own things. And I'm not putting that on each and every person because that's not everybody's path. But I'm just surprised that I haven't seen more of it. It's not really a criticism. It's just like I thought there would be more independent creators. Just like, well, if I have nothing to fall back on, then it might as well be me. I thought I was going to see more of that, or maybe they are and they're working on it right now. I'm hoping that they're working on it right now. But what I'm saying is that I'm surprised that I don't see more people at least like laying the groundwork to do that. Especially because like I know there's so many people out there who have been working on their own stories and their own personal projects and their own things for such a long time. And I would think that now is the time to like see what that could be and rise up in whatever form it might exist. Is it a comic? Is it a book? Is it an animation? Is it, is it something else? Is it a short form? Is it a podcast? Like whatever that is. Like I feel like
But you mean like self-released, right? As opposed to going to the
self-released.
studios. So, yeah, because right now studios are, it seems like they're not picking anything up. So yeah,
Yeah,
you
I wouldn't ever rely on a studio even before this era, honestly. I learned very very quickly, even when I was still in college, that it's very unlikely that a studio is going to pick up your thing
Yeah.
because they have like thousands of people pitching them, and most of them are going to be internal.
I
It's
think
probably not going to happen.
I think the guy that created that TV show, that animated series Final Space. Are you familiar with that show?
I think I know what you're talking about. I don't think I've seen it. What is Final Space?
So it was uh I can't remember the creator's name. It's I know somebody loves that show and is screaming right now, um but it was produced by Warner Brothers, and it was streaming on HBO Max, and it was on TNT and all that, but they canceled the show before its final season. Like they just left that as a cliffhanger. Um, but anyway, long story short, the creator of that series, since the show was owned in full by Warner Brothers, he had no rights to it, like to take it somewhere else to finish the show.
Sucks.
So he ended up creating a new show, but I think it's streaming on YouTube.
Hmm.
Like he's like, all right, well, I'm not gonna let anybody stop me from, uh from holding my creative voice back, so he's still out there creating and doing his thing, but it's just like finding alternatives to going through that studio system,
Yeah.
especially when they screwed him over the way they did.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
So
a common story as well. It's not
Yeah.
just him, I'm sure. But I feel like to what you're saying, Lauren, like that will become more common if it is what we're all talking about, that the sort of entry level jobs or the sort of like the in between years of figuring yourself out are not as viable for people to get jobs in the meantime as artists, that there will have to be more artists that kind of create things like Patreon, for instance. Like you said, Eric, when you were in school, Patreon did not exist, and it does now. So it's like there will be communities of artists or people who, support artists, that will come up with different either sites like that or like avenues for artists to get together and make their own work, because it can't. I think that, like you said, there's too many artists to just give up and not make their work if they can't get hired and they can't make a living at it. And I have hope in that anyway. But and that might be you listening right now, that you might be one of those people like, I have an idea of how to get artists to team up and make their own things. But I think left to our own devices, it is really hard, because it means if we're not making a living on the thing we want to make, we have to make a living somewhere, like doing something else. And
Yeah.
then there's mental health and physical health and taking care of family members and all that stuff. It's going to be slower, it's going to take years. But I still feel like, again, I just want to focus on the future, all of us to focus on the future more so than the present. And in the
Mhm.
present, it should just be about survival any way we can, to just survive the moment. And if art is something you really want to make it happen for yourself. But it doesn't, making it happen for yourself doesn't mean you might ever make a living on it, and that should be okay. Like Eric said, if you want to do this regardless of whether you ever see a penny out of this, then you will find a way to do it.
when
Yeah.
when I have students that get all in their feelings and they're like, "Oh, I'm not gonna make it. I don't know what to do," and I get in the camera and I just shout, "Don't make me quote Yoda. Don't make me do it. You want to make me do it, aren't you?"
Drop the
They're
quote,
like,
Eric.
then they're just like, "What?" Then the younger ones are like, "Who's Yoda?" And I'm like,
Ah! Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
do or do not. There is no try. Like, my God, have you not? And then I get really sad. I'm like, I'm not that old.
Listen,
Like you
not.
just
I
never seen
promise.
Star Wars.
If they don't know Star Wars by now, come on. Like, come on now.
Yeah, like how are you in school to learn how to do sci-fi fantasy art? You ain't never seen Star Wars. That don't make sense to me. But anyway, but yeah, that's like that wraps it up. It's like you either want to do it or you don't.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And some people, yeah, like to the mental health aspect, some people do, I'm sure, feel very burned out right now and very discouraged right now. And I know a lot of people, really amazing artists, who have actually like walked away for a little bit, like taken a break, a long-term break from art. And they're like, they're like, I'm going to come back. I just can't right now. And I'm going to do something else in the meantime. Again, completely fine. Totally fine.
It's not a
especially if you
failure.
know that you're going to come back and if you know that you need a break and to recharge it, I think that's fine. Like it's not to say that like, oh my God, you have to be doing this or else you're awful. Like no, some people need a break and some people need a hiatus from art. That's fine. Just like just please don't abandon it or at least like make art for yourself for a little bit. Make art because you want to, not because anybody's like looking at you. If you like feel burned out or if you like know that you're not going to want to try to pursue this as a career right now, try to preserve it in some way or another. Even if it comes out as a different form of creative expression, even that's viable too. But like I said, we do need our artists. So for the people who might still have some gas in the tank, try to do what you can to keep it going and try to do what you can to like again, I think long-term planning is the kind of moral of the story here. Try to look ahead into the future. And I know that we can't predict the future because everything is changing so rapidly and we've given ourselves technology that may not be serving us right now. But what has the most staying power, I think, is people who are creative. That's never going to go away. People are always going to be making until the end of time unless we stop ourselves. So as long as we don't stop, we're gonna still art's still gonna be out there no matter what. Real art, human made art. So don't give up the fight. I know it's hard. I know it's a struggle. I know it seems like the entire world and every situation is against us between layoffs and AI and social media and all that stuff and billionaires controlling the world and it's bleak. It feels bleak. But when the pendulum swings one way, it always has to come back
Yeah.
one way or another. It's going to look different when it comes back. But I'm eager to see when it comes back what's going to change and who will still be creating because it's probably going to be special and there's a lot of space for a lot of new things to come out and a lot of new methodologies to work. Things will change all the time. Let's make sure that they change for the better.
Here,
So
here.
you're here. All right. Well, thank you for listening. I hope that it was encouraging. I hope that my hot takes didn't offend anybody. Even if they did, like, I guess see why it offended you if you have complaints and, air them. I like different perspectives. It's fine. But overall, we need you. So, thank you for listening. And sorry for the long hiatus. Uh, case in point, we needed a break.
Yeah.
We were busy. We were very busy. And sometimes we needed to walk away, but we knew we were coming back. And so we're glad to be back. So I hope y'all enjoyed this episode. Please, if you enjoyed it, feel free to leave a like, leave a comment, maybe subscribe if you want. Smash that, notification bell to let you know when a new episode's coming out. We're gonna try to keep doing these more regularly again. But again, Mia's working on a long time project. I'm bouncing around between every different thing. And Eric has all his projects going on too. So we got busy lives, but glad you're here sticking with us. And we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.